Welcome to the version 7.7 release notes video review. Jumping straight into this one, we have some updates to the SEO Rendering Logic. Looking at this custom module item here, we can see if we inspect the code in the head section, OG title, so an open graph title for the meta element here, and it's got a value of design. Scanning over this, there's no other meta elements showing. We do have the title tag, but that will always display because it's either going to use the name of the item or the name of the page. So there's always going to be something to display for that. If I jump into that item, we can see on the SEO tab, I have the value of design for the open graph title. So of course that's going to render in the browser. So nothing new there, that's the default behavior of the platform. So the changes here are that all the SEO fields are now going to detect whether there are existing hard-coded fields or elements that you are inserting with Liquid. That used to only work for the title, and I think maybe the description as well. So if you'd hard-coded a title tag into your, let's say, the content template, then that wouldn't get overridden by any SEO title that you put into the SEO tab. However, all the other meta elements would. They would just double up because the system wasn't detecting that there were hard-coded ones. So now if we were to come and grab this, so I'll just make a copy of that OG title, put that into the head section. I'm just going to change the value slightly, so we'll just say test. And now if I go and refresh that page, we'll see that we have the hard-coded value is now overriding, and we don't have a duplicate of the OG title. So even though we have that set up in the SEO fields, the hard-coded one will take and not be overridden, or more to say that there won't be duplicates created. So there are additional steps you can take here with Liquid and some conditional logic depending on how you want that to work. So you can actually manipulate that, but that's now all the SEO fields are more consistent in their behavior. So they're all using the same sort of logic. It also says here that there's some regex based value detection. So I'm assuming, I don't know the actual regex scripting there to detect what's considered an empty field as opposed to one that's been filled. I'm guessing maybe that it needs to have, maybe more than 3 characters or some letters in there or something like that, just to detect whether the field is in fact empty for that logic to work. So I'm guessing that's just making it a little bit more robust in case there's maybe an accidental character put into the field or something like that. I'm not sure. Okay, and then it's just listing there all the fields that it works with, but it's essentially all the fields that are in the SEO tab. So if you're implementing your own logic there to render out your SEO meta elements, then this update just makes that a bit cleaner. The system is going to honor your hard-coded elements. Okay, and then continuing with the SEO fields, we now have the ability to update or save the SEO values from the front end. So when you have front end submitted items, custom module items, all the SEO fields are now also in the create and update forms. Just to quickly demonstrate that, I will look into the components toolbox here. If we go to our custom modules and let's say we want to do the update item form, I'll choose services. Once we have a look at that code, let's get rid of this. Okay, we can see down the bottom of the form here, we have all the open graph fields. We have our AMP content, SEO priority, meta tags, canonical, etc. So they're all now available in that update form. They're essentially allowing us to edit all the SEO data from a front-end interface as well. Okay, moving on to the reoccurring subscriptions reminder improvements. Okay, so this update brings about some more flexibility with the like reminder emails that are associated with subscriptions. So just to point out some differences here and where there might be some confusion. So under email notifications and emails, so we've had the follow-up emails for a while now, and they're specifically associated with events. So when people book into an event, you can have follow-up or reminder emails to send out based on the event start or end dates, etc. But we now have reminder emails, which are set up the same way, but these are specifically for reoccurring items. So we can have reoccurring items in our member areas. So you can have a secure zone or member area that recurs, has a recurring subscription. Just a regular form can create a recurring subscription. We have events can be set to be reoccurring, just the same as products can be set to be reoccurring. So that's if someone books to an event or purchases a product that is a reoccurring item, they're essentially subscribed to that reoccurring schedule. And it's that subscription to that reoccurring schedule as to what these reminder emails apply to. So very different to the follow-up emails, but similar in the way that they're set up and the way that they work. There's been a little bit of talk about changing sort of the descriptive names of these to make that a bit clearer, because at the moment it's probably some confusion there when you look at that, but that's the distinction. So now there's a specific category or section for reminder emails. So this is for the recurring subscriptions. So the reminder emails can be set up here to use for that recurring subscription reminders. And we set them up in much the same way. You can give it some sort of descriptive name and you choose from the emails that you've created from the email section. So you select which email like layout you want to use, or you can create a new one from here. And then we can assign it to the entity or type of reoccurring item that we want it to apply to. And again, that's going to be either the secure zone, a form, an event, or a product. And so what it's saying here is that you can assign multiple like reminder setups or reminder rules to the same events or the same reoccurring items entities. So that enables you to then build like a chain of follow-ups or reminders. If you had the all items checked, that's just going to apply to everything that reoccurs to do with events in this case, because we have events selected. So any current reoccurring events, any new ones, anything that then matches the rule set that you've created here, if it's triggered, then that will apply. Otherwise, you can disable that and choose specific items. So if you have an event that is set to recur, you can select it here and then just click add. So you can add multiple events. You might have 5 recurring events, so you can specifically choose those to apply to this reminder rule. So it's very flexible on what you can apply it to. Then, of course, as we had before, you can set the delivery time, if it's days or hours before or after. And at the moment, you select the date field that all this revolves around. And at the moment, it's just subscription end date, but it does have a note in here at the bottom here that the date field is the subscription end date with future extensions planned. So I'm not quite sure why this start date wasn't used here instead or is available. Typically, I would go for the start date first with setting up these sorts of things, but either way, it looks like it's planned to have more date-based fields are going to become available here. So, and then there's even more filtering rules, so you can choose whether to basically send this reminder out based on the subscription status. So if it's active or cancelled or incomplete, past due, etc. So a lot of flexibility there. So maybe you're setting up an email just to remind people to pay because their subscription has expired. So you can specifically target that status. And then additionally, you can target the customer's state. So this is their location, like their address, state or region. So however you're capturing states, whether it's the acronym for the state or the full name, however you're currently capturing them, you would enter that in. And then that's creating the rule set for this particular reminder. Okay, so the specific changes with this, some of this was implemented before, but I just felt going through all that again just for clarity. And some of the changes specifically are that we can now create multiple rule sets and apply to the same entity, the same item, so that you can build out that multi-step reminder workflow. And the all items checkbox that's been updated there. We've just changes how it to like what items it's going to apply to. So I think there's just some changes on how that interface works and how we can apply to individual items. And then the delivery date structure, or the logic on how the dates work is consistent with both the event reminders and the recurring subscription reminders. So I really like the flexibility of this and how it can work with all the kinds of reoccurring items that we have, so that it all works the same way. So no matter what reoccurring structures you have, we've got that consistent framework to use. Okay, so moving to the next one, the partner site templates. So this is a new feature brought into the portal, the reseller portal. So because there's some restrictions coming in to how many trial sites we're going to be able to have and how long they can remain active, all sorts of things like that, we now have the ability to mark certain trial sites as templates so that they're sort of locked away from the restriction rules that are going to come into effect. But it also allows you to keep those as like a base template that you want to build other sites from. So it becomes a bit of a handier feature for doing that rather than just duplicating a trial site that you've got sitting there. So one of the first things we will notice here, we've now got a filtering type based on that template state. So you can look at just sites or just your templates. So that's just a quick way of filtering those down. And when you mark a site as a template, so you'd come to the action menu here, and there'd be an option to mark it as a template. If it's not already a template, this one's already a template. So we can obviously create from template. So that's essentially the same as the duplicate function that you would see on a regular trial site. But in the settings, we now have some options. There's the ability to upload a thumbnail image, so we can recognize that when we're creating new sites. So if we come to trial sites and create a new site, we can see now that thumbnail we set up is displaying within the templates selection interface. And as it says here, the order in which templates now display. So we'll always have the blank template first, then it'll list out any of your own saved templates. So like it's showing here, and then followed by all the WebinOne templates. So just making that a little bit easier to select and find those templates for setting up sites a little bit faster. Okay, so the limitations with this, the amount of templates that we can create on an agency partner is 10. If you're a partner level, it's 5. Associates is 3. So you can create 3 templates. Free users don't have any, and they won't see the Marcus template option at all. And it's just saying that once your limit is reached, then the Marcus template becomes inactive, or probably grayed out, something like that. Okay, so if you use the duplication of sites a lot to create new sites from, this is going to come in really handy for you. So check that one out. Okay, and next up we have the advanced AI search. So this is a interesting feature, allowing site search to be a lot more flexible and sort of content aware. So because it's AI powered, it's going to be able to look at the search queries and determine the search intent and the context of what you're searching for. So this is currently in beta, and it is a extension. So there probably will be some pricing to come with that as like a paid extension. So hopefully we'll see some pricing information on that soon. So you would install it through your portal, just as you would any other extension. Then once it's installed, under your extensions, you should see the advanced AI search. So to get this working, it does actually use OpenAI's AI. So you will need to grab an API key from there. So create an account if you don't have one already. So it does fall under a cost-based model. So there's some links here to where to go to create an account, the pricing model, which I believe it's not too expensive, but obviously that depends on your use case and how much the search is going to be used for your particular application. And then it just talks about the actual model that it uses, the text embedded 3 large. So you can read up on how that works if you want to know more about that. But basically, once you have your API key, just plug that into the settings and save that, obviously. And then we have two main ways we can use this. There's first the multi-module searches. So basically, this is where it's more of like a whole site search if you want it to be, but you can put together the modules that you want to use for search results. So if you want to have all your custom modules, or you can add pages or products, anything like that, or any combinations of that. And you can create multiple search groups. So you can have different searches for different groups of data. So that's really cool. At the moment, I've just created the one here, you can see, and I've combined two custom modules, the services and the team modules. So they're the two modules I'm searching with this particular configuration. So basically, you just give the setting a name, and then you can choose from all the modules in the system. So the built-in modules, custom modules, pages, products, etc. And you just add those to the list. So you can see here I've got services and team. And once you do that, each properties from those modules can become available to search within. So by default, the description and name properties are what's used to search. And there are a few other ones by default. And we only have a few because they're really the only ones that are consistent across all modules. So name and description obviously are part of all items. The site search keywords and the URL are consistent. So I've created a short description property within these two modules. So that one then becomes available because both modules have the exact same named property. So by doing that, you can have a consistent search across those. But otherwise, you won't see other custom properties if they're only unique to one particular module. So you can add those in there. And then once they're added, each property can have its own weighting on how it's used in the search. So we can see here we have the description and the name, and they're given a percentage weight. So you can adjust this manually, or you can use the slider here, the main vertical line here. You see, you can drag that to change the proportions that each property will be used. So I'm just going to give that 50-50 roughly. But then within the properties, we have a different type of weighting. So we have this concept of a main search and a context or contextual based search. So if we're looking at the name field, the title, this sort of says that, okay, when someone uses a search term, let's say it's cooking, we want that phrase to be used in the main sense of the title. So sort of more looking at a direct string match or character match. This is how I understand it anyway. So we're giving that type of search a heavier weight as opposed to a contextual based weighting. So if I increase the context weighting, that would allow the AI to sort of think more about the keyword cooking and look for related, contextually related phrases or keywords around that term. And so it might return more obscure results that have a contextual correlation, as opposed to being a more direct character or string match. So that's my understanding of how you can tailor the search algorithm there. Okay, so you can do this for any properties you add. Then we'd save that, obviously. And in terms of the properties that you can search, it's really just the text-based properties. So there are some properties you can't search on, like the media property. So you can't search based on what image has been added. And then the default ones that are across all modules is the name, URL, description, and site search keywords. Okay, and then we talked about the weighting, which is what you can configure here in the sliders. And just a note on the validation here. So if you do use a property within one of these search configurations, you can't change that name within the module because the search is now referencing that property. So I guess you would have to remove it from the search if you need to change the property name and then add it back in afterwards. And then that's the main context weighting that we were referencing before. And then advanced search forms. So not only can we create these search groups, the multi-module searching, you can search just within one specific group. So either creating a group that just has one module, or you can actually go to the module itself. So say we go to services, and once the AI search is installed, you'll see advanced search in the settings. You can enable this specific module to have AI search. So enabling it there, and then we'll see the same sort of settings that we had in the multi-model search. So you can configure an individual module separately to a group search. So once that's enabled, we'll save that one as well. So I'll just quickly go through tests doing both ways. It's slightly different setup on how you would put that onto the page. But just following on here, there's automatic vector generation. So the vector is like the indexing of all the search results. So it's saying here that every time something's saved or changed, the vector should automatically update. So the search should always be up to date. So if you come across any issues with the search, perhaps regenerating vectors might help update that index and solve some search issues. But generally, it should happen automatically. Okay, and so as I said, there's two main ways to run these AI searches. So directly on a module itself, or more of a site-wide or group search. So there's two different ways on implementing that. So firstly, there's a new component, a new Liquid component called Advanced Site Search. And this is what you would use to render out the results on a multi-module search. So I'll just open up a page here and quickly run through that. So this is accessible from the component toolbar. So you will see Advanced AI Search. And it's essentially the same as any other component. We have most of the same filtering and sorting fields, etc. Any multi-module AI search configuration that you've made will be shown here. So I've just got the one at the moment. Now we can set a layout. There is a default layout that will just render out the name and description, I believe. But there's no admin interface for creating layouts. So you can manually create a layout in the file manager and then just reference the path to that layout. So we can apply filtering. So using the new where object filtering. So even though it's a search, we can still apply what looks like we can still apply filtering on top of that to have even more customization and precision in what sort of results are returned. But then we have two new properties. So the semantic query, so that's the actual search term that's used. So you don't need to add this to the component if you're using the search form. But you could use this component outside of the search form. You could use it just to programmatically display, dynamic data or based on some other property. So this could be a powerful use to draw in multiple module data into the one component. So it doesn't have to be used with a search form as such. So this is where you could hard code your own sort of keyword into that, and that will then build that into the component tag. I'll leave that off in this case. Then we have the minimum score property. Think of this like a sort of a relevancy threshold. So depending on how relevant the result is, it'll be given a relevancy score, and you can then filter out the results based on that score. So if you want to tighten up the search a bit, so it only returns fairly well-matched items, you can dial this score up. So having a score of 1 would be very strict and would only let items come into the search results if they were very strongly matched, whereas something like a 0.1 or 2 would be very lenient. It would let a lot of search results come through. So think of that as like a threshold. And what I found with playing with this, this is a fairly critical value to add to this, because you will need to play with it. Because it is AI-based, it's not an exact science-based search. It's going to have some thinking behind it. So you will need to play with that depending on the types of data that you're searching, depending on the site, the content, and what your users are likely to be searching with. I'd suggest probably setting it quite low, so maybe even a 0.1 or 2, just to start with, to see if the results are working, and then just dialing it back systematically from there to find the sweet spot. So let's set that to 0.3 at the moment. So once we have that configured, we can place that down on the page, and let's just see what that's going to give us. Okay, so there are 3 items in each of these modules. We've got these 3 we can see at the top in capitals, and then we've got 3 of the team members listed out. So by default, just like the site search component, it's just going to list everything out because it's like a blank search. There are ways to avoid that if you don't want just to display anything by default. In the documentation for site search, that's in there. Now let's look at adding the form code. So again, we've got a link to the form code. So we'll put that above our component here. And we can see it's just a very basic form. We just have an input for entering in the query, the search term, and a submit button. So we'll save that. Okay, so I'm going to first search the term marketing. And what we'll notice happens is, obviously all the team member items have gone because they don't have the word marketing in them or anything like that. But we have all the other items. Now, they don't have marketing in them either, but this is where the fairly low score and the AI is interpreting that marketing keyword and saying, well, marketing is semantically related to strategy and analytics. It's related to design and development, but maybe we don't want it to be that loose with the search results. So we could dial up this minimum score. So we could go to maybe 0.5, and we'll see what happens. Again, searching for the word marketing. So now nothing's coming through. So interestingly, it's even dropping the one that had marketing in it. And again, this is where you just need to play with the settings, not only the minimum score, but the advanced settings in the extension, because you can play around with all the weighting. So maybe the name field needs more weighting, or the context needs a bit more weighting, just to allow that to come through better, depending on how you want the search to work. So I'm just going to put that back to 0.3. So we'll look at the other way to set this up. So let's just get rid of all of this. So if you just wanted advanced search working on a single module, so back in our component toolbar, under the custom modules, where we've always had the search form, again, you can configure this for the module you want to search. And with the general site search, we would add the form code and the component for that particular module with the is search results true parameter added to that component. Now we have an additional form code for the advanced search. We still use the same component for this particular output. We don't use the advanced site search component, the new one. because this is specific to an individual module. So I'll put down the component and I'll grab the advanced form code. And we can see essentially it's the same. We have our semantic query input and our submit button, but it also has just a hidden field to pass in the module ID, so it knows what module is being searched. And the only difference with this code to the previous one we did, it has this request liquid here that pulls in the search query from the URL back into the input field. And that's just a nice touch to just keep that input pre-populated with the search term that they use. You could do the same thing with the other one. It's just not pre-built into it. Now, again, it doesn't say here in the release notes, but the minimum score parameter that we had in the new component, that actually works in individual module components as well. And I dare say that it's really required because, I mean, it would be 0.5 by default, but it's required in the sense that, you really need to play with this setting to get the search right. So I'm going to manually put that in and we'll save that, and we'll see what this page returns now. So again, we're seeing all the items, and that's what we would expect to see. So we'll just search on the term marketing again. And you can see something changed, the order of them changed. So obviously the AI is determining the relevance of those items. So it's moved online marketing to the top. So obviously it has a higher relevancy score, but it's still showing those others because our minimum score is obviously low enough to allow these somewhat related items to still be displayed in the search results. So again, dialing that back like we did before, we should see the exact same results. It's just that now we're just searching one particular module. But again, this is using the settings that we configured in the module itself. So under the module settings. So this search configuration would be being used now for the search that we're running, whereas before it would have been using the configuration from the extension settings. So in here. So you can have two separate searches for maybe even the same data, but using different configurations for how that AI is going to behave. Okay, and lastly, the role-based access for this. So setting up admin user roles, you can lock this down just like with everything else, and even turn off the individual module settings. So you can turn these off for individual modules. So you can allow an admin to access advanced search for some modules, but not others. So again, very fine-grained permission controls for this as well. Okay, and back to another portal feature is just some additional information in the activation page. So when you're moving one of your existing version 6 live sites to a version 7, and you update that plan, you'll see some additional information around that site just to make it clearer as to where the pricing is coming from, particularly around the email accounts. It's sometimes a little bit hard to see and get access to how many email accounts and their storage and all that sort of thing. So now that'll be displayed in that summary or overview page. Okay, and with the request access to the Zapier extension, the way Zapier works is an invitation email you had to accept to get access to that. You had to contact support to get that email link. Now you can actually request that invitation directly from the Zapier extension. So when you're on your extensions section, look at the information for Zapier. We now have a get your invite link directly in the description. So you can get set up with Zapier now without the roadblock of having to contact support and waiting for that request. Okay, so just automating that a little bit. Okay, and lastly, just 3 bug fixes. So have a read through those see if any of those are affecting your workflows. Okay, thank you.